This video in-service provides training on how to operate and use your Eden fetal monitor. We'll start by reviewing all the different accessories and cables that are included in your Eden fetal monitor. First, we'll start with your fetal heart rate transducers. You should get 2 fetal heart rate transducers. This is how you can provide or perform readings of the fetal heart rate of the fetus. So there's 2 of them, and they connect on the FHR1 and FHR2 ports of the monitor. Next, we have the Toco transducer. This is the pressure transducer. This is how you can compute or calculate or have a reference reading of the intensity of the contraction. So this connects on the Toco port of the monitor. And finally, we have the remote marker. So this connects on the mark port, and this is what the mother would use to press upon and generate a mark on the strip of the fetal monitoring waveform to note some sort of activity or reference. So these are your fetal monitor transducers and sensors. These are used to take readings and provide readings on your CTG waveform. Next, we'll go through if your monitor has also monitoring parameters such as your EKG, SpO2, and so on. The monitor also includes those accessories. If your monitor does not have them, it's because your monitor is not equipped for them. That's an optional feature. So first, we start with the SpO2 sensor. This connects on the SpO2 port, and you place it on the fingertip of your patient. Next, we have the 3-lead ECG cable. This connects on the MECG port, which stands for Mother ECG, and it's a 3-lead cable. So this you would place on the chest of the patient to get the maternal ECG. And next, we have the NIVP pieces, which is your tube and your cuff. So the tube connects to the NIVP tube on the monitor, and the cuff connects on the opposite side of the tube. And this is how you can take an NIVP reading on your patient and get the reading on your monitor. Alright, so these are your core accessories. Again, the transducers are for getting your CTG waveform, and your EKG, SpO2, and NIVP are for taking readings on the mother. In addition to that, there are also 3 belts provided on the monitor, which are intended to be used for the FHR transducers to keep it on the patient. And outside of those core transducers and accessories, we also have cables for data transfer. So we have an Ethernet cable for transferring data to a computer, and we have an RS-232 cable. Most modern computers don't have RS-232 ports, and that's why a RS-232 to USB adapter is provided. And for power, we have the AC power cord, of course, and your battery. And finally, we have this yellow and green cable. This is your grounding cable. In case if your facility is next to a radio station, if there's a lot of electrofrequency interference, if you use this cable, if you ground the monitor, it'll buffer out that interference. So again, this is only used if necessary. Okay, now that we reviewed the different accessories and sensors that are included, let's move on to the operation of the monitor. To power on or off the monitor, you'll find there's a power switch on the right side of the case. After turning on the monitor, let's start by loading the paper. To open up the compartment, there's 2 clips on the compartment door. Press on them at the same time, and now you can prop open the compartment door. Now, to load the paper, you want to make sure you have the grid facing up. And if you take a look at the opposite side, one of the sides is going to have a red marker. This is the indicator to help or assist the clinician know that the paper is about to run out. So you want to make sure that you're starting and loading the paper on the side that doesn't have that red marker. So when you place the paper, the FHR reference has to be on the left side. The CTG or the TOCO has to be on the right. So on the left, the grid should be going from 30 to 240, and on the right, it's 0 to 100. So you load the paper with the grid facing up. So you want to make sure it's nice and centered. And then you take one sheet and you prop it over the roller, and now you can close the compartment. Okay, now that we have the paper properly inserted, let's review some of the features of the monitor. We'll start with the keypad. The start key, this is the operation that tells the monitor that there's a new patient. So once you have the patient connected, you have all the sensors, press start, and this will refresh the system to begin with the brand new session, which indicates that this is a new patient. The next key is the silence key. Press it to mute any alarms that are going off. So if you take a look, when you press it, on the bottom of the screen there's a little bell. If it's not crossed over, it means that there's no mute period going on. If you press on it, there's going to be an X over the bell, which means that the alarm is muted. Next we have the auto zero. So the TOCO transducer, which I have here, the TOCO transducer, it's a pressure transducer. So when you place it on the patient, just due to the nature that you're going to be putting a belt on it, there's going to be some excess force. So when you first place it, the monitor will give you a TOCO reading, just due to the fact that there's some pressure due to the belt. So in order to take it back to baseline, you press the auto zero. So it'll take it back to the baseline, and only if there's additional pressure as a result of a contraction will the TOCO reading go up, or the TOCO measurement reading would go up. So when will you have to do or use the auto zero? So take, for example, you have a current patient. After 5 minutes, the patient moves or the belt becomes loose, and you have to reset the transducer. You place the transducer on the patient. Again, there's going to be some initial excess force. You press the auto zero, and it'll take you back to baseline. The auto zero also occurs when you press the start key. So when you press start, it starts a new session and automatically sets the auto zero. So you don't have to press the auto zero key every single time you have a new patient. It's automatically performed when you press the start key. Rather, it's there in the case of say if the patient moves and the transducer falls off, so that you don't have to start from scratch, from the very beginning. You only press the auto zero. Okay, next we have the mark key. So if you press it, this will place a marker on the CTG waveform. So this, by pressing the mark, you're going to have an arrow pointing down, and this means that this was a clinician mark. So we have the mark right here. If the patient presses the remote marker, it'll give you an arrow pointing up. So that's the difference between the two. So pointing down means that the mark was induced by pressing the mark key, and typically it's used as an indicator. So perhaps you placed or gave the patient some sort of medication. So this would be your reference to let you know that something was induced to the patient, which may be the explanation of why the waveform is abnormal. Next we have the print key. If you press on the print key, you'll start printing, and if you press it again, if the monitor is currently printing and you press the print key, it'll stop printing. Next we have the channel key. The monitor, it'll give you an FHR feedback, so it'll give you the sound of the FHR, and if the patient has twins, you would have two FHR transducers on the patient at the same time, but the system can only give you the FHR sound of one transducer. Otherwise there's going to be overlapping sounds and it's going to be chaotic. So if you press the channel key, you go from the sound feedback of the transducer 1 to transducer 2. So you go from FHR 1 to FHR 2. So that's the channel key. And finally we have the NIVP key. you press it to take an NIVP reading on your patient. So that would be the mother's NIVP. So that's the core features of the keypad. Start, to start a brand new session, start a new monitoring session for a new patient. Silence, to silence the alarm. Auto zero, in case if the toco transducer fell off, you put it back on the patient and you press the auto zero to take it back to baseline. Mark, to put a marker of an event on the CTG waveform. Print, to stop or start printing. Channel, to go from the audio feedback of FHR1 to FHR2 and vice versa. And NIVP, press it to take the NIVP reading of your patient. Now let's review the different sections on the screen of the monitor itself. In the lower left hand corner we have the AC power icon. Next we have the battery, the alarm. If it has an X over it, it means that it's silenced. Next we have the printer icon, time and date. The core information, we have the fetal heart rate waveform with the CTG waveform. So this is your fetal parameters with your fetal parameter readings. FHR1, FHR2, toco, and maternal fetal movement. And in the bottom section we have your maternal parameters. So we have the ECG waveform, the ECG reading, the SpO2 waveform, SpO2 reading, and your NIVP. And if you take a look in the upper right hand corner of the screen, we have some very useful icons. The first one, so we take the knob to navigate the screen. The first one here is used to advance paper. So if you want to rip off a piece of paper, and if it's right on the middle so you can't get a good breaking point, you can use this icon to advance the paper to be able to easily rip it off. Next we have the screen adjustment icon. So if you press this icon, so again we use the knob to navigate when it's highlighted. If you press on it, you can go from different screen displays. There's 3 different options. One, it'll give you only the fetal parameter, so only if you have the FHR and the toco. If that's all you care about, you can set it to that display only because that's what you're concentrating on. If you press on it again, it'll go on your maternal parameter, so that's the mother's ECG and SpO2. So only if you care about the ECG, SpO2, the maternal readings, you can set it to the maternal view. Or we have the fetal plus maternal view. So again we have the maternal screen view. I'm sorry, it's the fetal parameter view, the maternal view, and a combination of both. And to the right we have the patient information icon. At any time, if you want to adjust or modify the name of the patient or the ID, press on it and you can enter that information. And the icon that's all the way at the right, it's a square with a line going around it. That's your menu icon. So let's go over your main menu settings. The first tab is Start Monitoring. So through this menu, we can adjust what happens when we press the Start key. So the first setting is Print. If it's set to off, the machine, it's going to start a new patient, but it's not going to start printing automatically. If we set it to on, after we press Start, you start a new session and the system automatically starts printing. Maternal info, if it's set to off, after pressing Start, the system is not going to ask you to enter the patient name. If it's set to on, it is. So typically the most recommended setting is to have Print on and maternal info on, so that the machine automatically starts printing and it'll remember you to enter the patient information. Because otherwise, at the end of the day, if you have a long strip with no patient information, it may be a little bit hard to identify it. So right now we'll set the Print to on, maternal info to on, and volume 3. So the volume is the intensity of the FHR feedback. So we press OK. The general, we can adjust the general setting. So for example, key volume, this is the feedback noise of when we press or rotate the knob. Set it to off, it's gone. So the screen of the color, startup music, and so on. So these are very basic settings that don't require much attention. The alarm, this is where we adjust the alarm settings. So we press to select it, and the password is 999999. So it's 4 9s in total. You press enter, and now you can adjust the upper and the lower limits of all your parameters. So your heart rate, your SpO2, and your fetal parameter alarms. So by default, it'll have the standard alarms, which are found in every patient and fetal monitor, but you can always go in and modify it to your preferences. Okay, next we have the recorder. So we can set the print speed is 3 centimeters per minute, which is the standard setting, and timer. So timer, the current setting is infinite, which means that the monitor will start printing and it'll keep going until you press the start key. But if you select a numerical selection, for example 30, the monitor will it'll start printing, and after 30 minutes it'll stop by itself. So again, for the timer setting, if you set a numerical reference, this is your time period. So 30 would mean 30 minutes. The monitor starts printing, and automatically after 30 minutes it'll stop printing by itself. Okay, the other setting or menu of interest is the mother. Here is where we can adjust the settings related to the maternal parameter. So your ECG, you can set the heart rate beat to be off, low, or high. Your NIVP, the cycle setting, if it's manual, it'll take a reading only when you press the NIVP key. Or if you set, for example, a setting of 5, it'll take a reading automatically every 5 minutes. And your unit, this is your temperature unit if you're using the temperature transducer, Fahrenheit, here in the US. Okay. Alright, so to summarize, your start monitoring controls your start key, and we set it so that it'll start printing by itself. When we're ready, it'll ask us to enter the maternal information. Your recorder, we set it to 30 minutes, so it'll start printing automatically for 30 minutes and stop by itself. The monitoring will continue, but the printer will stop. Your alarm, 9999. So again, here we can adjust your ranges. And the other setting of interest that I wanted to point out, it's the alarm pause setting or silence duration. If we set it to 1 minute, 2 or 3 minutes, it'll only be muted for those specific reference points. If you set it to infinite, it'll be an infinite or a long-term mute. Okay, so alarm, we can adjust all your alarm ranges for all your parameters. Okay, now we have the monitor ready, and these are a one-time setting application only. So if you turn off the monitor, turn it back on, those settings will remain. So we press exit. Okay, so now we're ready to use the monitor, and the actual operation of the monitor is very, very, very simple. All you do is you place your sensors and transducers on your patient, and the monitor automatically starts taking readings and giving you a waveform. There's no need to activate or start anything. So now that you have your sensors connected to your patient, we have the numerical readings, and we want to start or refresh a setting. So we press start, the monitor is cleared. The monitor will give us this indicator to remind us to enter the ID. 1, 2, 3. Enter name, QW. We press enter. Okay. So now the monitor clears for a second, and you start a brand new session. Now you have the name of the patient, the ID, and the monitor begins to automatically print. So it'll go for 30 minutes because that's the setting that we set. So here we have the fetal parameters and the maternal parameters. Again, we can toggle between different screen views. Now we're in the fetal parameters only, maternal parameters only, and a combination of both. We press the NIVP key to take a reading, and now it'll take another one automatically in 5 minutes because that's what we said. If the patient presses a remote marker, there's going to be an indicator on the screen, the MFM, to serve as reference. So it's that simple. You place all the transducers on your patient. The monitor automatically starts recording information, and when you press start, it clears the previous patient and you start a new patient. So now we go to ID2 and the name is RT. Oh, sorry. 2. Enter, and the name is RT. So it's press OK and it clears. You start a new patient. So there's new patient information. So it's that simple. Place the transducer on your patient, press the start key to start a new session. The system will automatically ask you to enter the information, and it'll start printing for 30 minutes or depending on your preferred setting. And that's it. You press the silence key to mute any alarms. If the transducer, the topo transducer accidentally falls, you place it back on your patient. You press auto 0 to set it back to the baseline, because when you press the start key, it also does the auto 0 command by itself. So you only do, so it does it by automatically. You only do the auto 0 if it falls during a session, so that you don't have to start all over and you can bring the topo back to baseline. Mark to induce a mark, a clinician mark. Print to stop or start printing depending on your current status. Channel to change between FHR1 and FHR2 feedback depending on your current setting, and NIVP to take an NIVP reading. If there's any additional questions or if further clarification is required on a specific parameter or function, please call the EDAN tech support number, which is 858-750-3066, extension 2. Thank you.